as I'm watching this prequel, it's been a couple years since I've seen the original Hunger Games, and I actually have not read the books. I've heard the books are really fun.
They are good.
I did read Twilight, embarrassed to say. I read Twilight while listening to Secondhand Serenade. I was in this really emo phase when I was like in my late teens. It was interesting. Welcome to another episode of Is This for Kids? I am Jonathan Bearded Blevins.
I am Katie, MrsRuvi.
And we are so excited that you continue to watch and listen to this podcast every week. And if you're new, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's a great podcast. I think you're going to like it.
And we are going to talk about a prequel today to the Hunger Games.
The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes.
Which, as far as movies go, is a really good title.
It is a really good title.
If you watch the movie, you'll understand.
It falls into that like Dr. Strangelove or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, like the very long.
Yeah,
I like it.
I like it too.
Yeah,
and in this episode, we're also going to talk in the same episode about the original Hunger Games as well.
Yeah. So just as like an overview of what is the Hunger Games. So this first one is a prequel, but it came out afterwards. The whole premise of the Hunger Games is that there was this big war, a civil war within the nation of Panem. Which seems to be broken up into something like states, they're districts, right? And when the war was over, in order to discourage further war, they started something called the Hunger Games, where each district has to provide a tribute, one male and one female, to fight in a battle arena to the death. And that this would be like a pageant, and they would be able to, there's like, by the time we get to the first set of movies, it's been the 75th Hunger Games, so they've done this quite a few times, and they've created this whole thing behind it. In the prequel, it's obviously in sort of its earlier years, but it eventually, like, it starts out as everybody gets their name in once as possibly being drawn, but the country uses it as leverage to keep people starving. So you get extra rations if you put your name in more times. And so our hero in the original movies, Katniss Everdeen, has her name in there several times because she has put herself at risk in order to get food for her family, right? So that's how we start out in the original Hunger Games. But first, we're going to talk about this prequel, which is when the Hunger Games are still in its infancy. This is only the 10th Hunger Games that we're watching. And we're seeing the later villain, President Snow, when he's a young man. And he's a sponsor, or not, what do they call them? A mentor.
A mentor, yeah.
A mentor for the Hunger Games.
Yeah, for the main character in District 12.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, okay, as I'm watching this prequel, it's been a couple years since I've seen the original Hunger Games, and I actually have not read the books. I've heard the books are really fun.
They are good.
I did read Twilight, embarrassed to say. I read Twilight while listening to Secondhand Serenade. I was in this really emo phase when I was like in my late teens. It was interesting.
One of my favorite videos that's going around the internet right now is Jason Kelsey explaining the entire Twilight series to his brother. And his brother like takes off his headphones. He's like, I'm not even listening, Jason. And Jason's not even.
So he knows Twilight.
Yeah, he doesn't even acknowledge. He's like, okay. And then Bella, she goes up and they have this baby, right? It's half vampire, half baby. And he just keeps going deadpan while he tells the entire plot of all 5 movies. It's incredible.
That is incredible. We should clip that with this and put it out there on ITFK.
Actually, Kylie Kelsey is my hero.
The Kelseys are good. They're almost as good at podcasting as we are.
Lady Kelsey, I like her.
But because I didn't read the books, and because it's been so long since I've seen the movies, I didn't remember. I thought that Snow was the main evil character in the originals, and so I'm finding myself like trying to root against him in this prequel. And the movie starts out and it's him with his cousin, before the Hunger Games were ever a thing. And there's a reference to cannibalism. Someone is about to chop off someone's arm and he's like, what is happening? And his older cousin is like, she's starving. And then it shows them growing up in this like super, super poor area, even though they're part of the capital. They live a lot more like they're actually almost worse off than some of the districts, it seems. And so, it follows Snow all the way through. And I I fell in love with his character.
Yeah.
And I was trying not to because I think he's the villain. So overall, just in general, the movie I thought was really good.
Yeah.
I got a lot of complaints for being long. I mean, I saw the Trolls movie beforehand, waited 30 minutes, and then sat through the 2.5-hour movie. And
that's exactly what I did.
Did you really?
Trolls and this one in the same day. Yeah.
And I was on the edge of my seat still the whole time during this Hunger Games movie. So I thought it was really good and very interesting and pretty dark. But I liked it. General.
It is extremely long. It's 2.5 hours long, and it is broken up into 3 parts. So it feels like 3 mini movies going through it. And so that's, to me, I felt like they did a great job cutting it up and making it into different parts. There is the reference to cannibalism, and the violence in this movie, this prequel movie, is actually quite a bit more intense than in the later chronologically, but earlier made movies. I hate that we have to keep doing that. It gets confusing.
Yep.
But in the original Hunger Games movies, the violence is a little bit different than here. We'll talk about that in a second. Oh wait, we're talking about them all together.
Yeah, all together.
Yeah, okay. So in the later Hunger Games movies, it's more implied violence. They tend to pan away. You see an arrow get shot, and then you see a guy fall to the floor, but you don't see blood spurt out. And like, there's a little bit, but not. You don't see somebody hacking anybody to death. There are people who are killed by exposure, by like this poisonous mist, by these animals. Like, there's a lot of things that come in that make it a little bit removed from the violence of a person killing another person. But in this movie, this is the earlier versions of the game. So they're not in like a big arena that is a forest or whatever. It's like a basketball stadium that had something fall down in it.
Yeah.
Like it's an actual, and there's not a lot of weapons though. Like in the movie, in the older movies, there's the cornucopia that has a ton of weapons in it. There's only a few weapons in there, and they're killing each other with their bare hands for the most part. They have rocks, they have clubs, they have knives, but it's much more violent. It's much more in-your-face violence. It's much more personal violence. And then there's one particular scene, and I'm sorry if this spoils it for you, fast forward like 10 seconds, where one of the other mentors one of the kids has gotten away, and they find him. And they have him hung up almost like a crucifix in there. And it scared me. I gasped as a grown woman seeing this child's body like splayed out, and he's not dead. They still have to kill him.
Yeah.
And someone does, and it's terrible. It's very upsetting. And like when she does, it's obviously a mercy thing, and there's that to it. But I just felt like for this one, the newer movie, it was a little bit more personal, a little bit more raw. And so I actually put this as a high school movie.
Yeah. I'm with you. Like it was looking back, I saw it. We're recording this a day after I saw it. Mm-hmm. There's also multiple hangings that they show, which like sometimes even, I mean, so there's movies that have that where they just pan away immediately and you don't really see anything, but it was pretty graphic. Mm-hmm. Some people get shot as well. So like it is a much more violent than the originals that you're talking about. And there's just a dark undertone throughout the entire thing because, spoiler alert, like you're watching the villain arc of a character.
Snow becomes the villain, yeah.
And it's super sad because you just see like the point that the movie I think is trying to make. One of the points is that like deep down humans are not good. Mm-hmm. And like we're going to choose whatever it is that's going to keep us alive. I disagree with that, but I understand the premise for sure. And so yeah, I just think high school is 14. So I'm going to go ahead and say 16, 17.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, because I mean, here's my thing. When I first saw Hunger Games, it came out before Fortnite, before like battle royales were kind of famous. There was like one super old book that was, I think, maybe called Battle Royale actually. That apparently what people love, not for kids, from what I've heard. Maybe it's a movie and a book.
The concept of battle royale, not for kids.
Not for kids.
Yeah.
But just the idea of like high schoolers being forced to kill each other is. I saw it as a 21-year-old, 22, 23-year-old, and I was messed up by it. I was like, man, that's so messed up. You start to think like, would I be able to kill a friend of mine in a situation like this? Like, no way I would be able to do that. Even just the thought of you saying, would I be able to do that, is just something I don't think a high schooler should have in their head. So I'm going to go like 16 years old for this one and maybe 15 for the other Hunger Games.
Okay. So I took my 2 oldest daughters to see this one. I saw it with my 10-year-old daughter and my 15-year-old daughter. My 10-year-old daughter, when we left the movie, said this was too much for me. Like, I don't feel good about. We had to talk about the things that made her have feelings.
Yeah.
She was like, I would probably put this as a high school age 14-year-old kind of thing. So but she has already watched, and so has my 9-year-old son, all of the younger Hunger Games movies, the ones from before, the other Hunger Games movies. They all saw all of those and had very little problem with it. So I think you're right. There is a lot of that there. I think there's something to be said about talking to kids about the nature that you have to be able to commit violence like that, and addressing it within yourself and be able to grow through that. I think there's a conversation to be had there that would be great for middle school age kids. But I would say the older ones, the actual Hunger Games movies, I would put those as a middle school age. This one I would say high school. And what you're saying with there continues to be violence after the Hunger Games is over, which is like the actual pageant itself. The Hunger Games is over, and then our main character continues on as a person in District 12, as a peacekeeper or soldier, and he sees people getting shot, getting hanged, and he comes to the conclusion that all life is the Hunger Games. That the Hunger Games are necessary because all life is the Hunger Games, and that's a dark thing to think, and it puts that idea in your kids' heads. I think there's an argument to be had there that that is a bad guy you're going to have to face in the world, that there are people who are dog eat dog, and the question is, how do you come out on top and be the person who lets them die by berries or whatever, doesn't do the bad thing.
Can you imagine? So there's a character in the prequel named Wovi. Do you remember Wovi?
Oh my gosh,
sweetest little girl. She has Down syndrome. So the fact I don't even like that they put her in that situation in that movie, just because
the heartlessness.
Oh yes, I said to myself, when the Hunger Games started, when the fight started, I was like, if someone kills her, if she doesn't die from some other way,
yes,
it is going to be horrific. That's horrific, and I won't spoil it. But if that would have gone down differently, I would have been pretty upset. I would have probably even raised the age.
Yeah.
Again, it has been a while since I've seen the original ones with Katniss. But I do remember it having, playful is probably the wrong word because these are teenagers killing each other. But it had a more almost
lighthearted.
Yeah, lighthearted. That's a great way to put it. And almost an even better use of fantasy. It felt like a different world. It didn't feel like a dystopian world. It is. But this one, the prequel, absolutely felt like dystopian, and this is very much not a thing that would ever happen in real life. I'm sorry, the original one with Katniss was there's no way this would ever happen. And this one's oh man, this is
those people have
real.
Lived that war. That's the thing, where you watch the main character at the beginning and he's starving and he's living in the capital, which has been bombed out as a result of that war. You can see how people grow into this belief that this is a thing that needs to happen as punishment. And even the characters who are abolitionist about the Hunger Games will say it needed to happen at first, but now we're too far out from it. And the people who were starving, feel like they're, I don't know. So yes, I know what you mean, that the capital people feel fanciful and ridiculous. But what's kind of funny to me? I say this at least twice a year when I go into a big city full of fancy people, because I live in the suburbs in the Midwest, so my people are not fancy.
Yeah.
But when you go into a fancy city full of people, I'm like, do they not know that the Capitol was the bad guy in Hunger Games? Because you are wearing Capitol clothes. You're fashionista clothes. Whenever I see sorry, Jason Kelsey, but Travis Kelsey, why are you dressing like you live in the Capitol? It's bananas. I don't love it.
Yeah.
It's so silly. And then the whole, taking pills so that they can continue to eat, and they vomit, and they're so starving, or they're so gluttonous that there's people starving and they don't care.
Yeah.
It's awful. But that feels very much like our reality.
The most I've ever felt like I was in the Hunger Games and part of the Capitol is when we go to when we were Young Fest, and there's hundreds of thousands of people on the ground, like right next to each other, just fighting for a good spot at these concerts.
Yes.
And I'm just at the top, sitting there let me sip on this champagne and walk privately over to this other concert and not miss a beat, and then come back and see the main show. It's super fun, and I'm thankful that I get to do it, but I'm oh my gosh, I'm in the Capitol.
Yeah. And they all got the crazy hair and stuff, and Block of Seagulls.
So for me, prequel, I'm going to go 16 and up.
Mm-hmm.
And for the other Hunger Games, I'm going to go 13 and up.
Okay. I like to do it by school years, so I'm going to say middle school, so it's 12 and up for the prequels, or for the original movies, and then for the prequel, I would say high school 14 and up.
Yes.
Yes.
And you don't need the prequel to watch the other ones. It very much is its own standalone movie.
Yeah, you don't even the prequel you can watch all by itself having never watched anything else, and vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't start at Hunger Games like the Mockingjay Part 2. That would be silly.
Right.
But yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
We would love to hear from you. If you have any suggestions of shows or movies or music or video games that you would like us to review, you can go to our Instagram, go to isthisforkids.com, leave comments, reviews, anything you want to let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. And the 5-star reviews over on Apple Podcasts really make a huge difference. I know a lot of you are watching this on YouTube, but the same content is available on podcast form. If you want to hear an audio only version, that's perfectly available to you. And also, did you know, if you can't get enough of us, you can go to patreon.com/@isthisforkids and you will find yourself a little bonus content smorgasbord.
Yes, including a Discord that we're going to be very active in.
So active.
You can find ways to send us fun gifts that will end up on our set, all kinds of stuff. So check out the Patreon for sure.
Absolutely. Hey, there is just so much content out there for us to go through as parents.
I'm Jonathan Beard of Blevins.
I'm Katie, MrsRuvi. Let us help you decide.
Is this for kids?